Picture Russia. What do you see? Probably endless winter, grim-faced leaders on the news, and maybe some imposing concrete buildings, right? For decades, the world's largest country has been painted with a broad and, frankly, pretty gray brush. It's been stereotyped, simplified, and shoved into a neat little box that's easy to label, but is nowhere near the truth. But what if I told you that for 2 months every year, a part of Russia is so drenched in sunlight that night just stops existing? Or that its history was shaped by a 15-year freefall into chaos, so wild it's called the time of troubles, complete with fake heirs, foreign invaders, and a famine that wiped out a third of the population? Forget the Russia you think you know. Forget the headlines and the Hollywood clichés. We're about to peel back the layers of a nation that is infinitely more complex, surprising, and fascinating than you can imagine. We're counting down 50 unbelievable truths that will completely shatter your perceptions and show you the real Russia. Let's get started. 50. A land of countless tongues kicking off our list. Let's immediately challenge the idea of a single, uniform Russia. While Russian is the official language, it's just one of well over 100 languages spoken across the country. The nation is a mosaic of over 190 distinct ethnic groups, each with its own traditions and heritage. And while ethnic Russians make up about 81% of the population, that remaining 19% represents a staggering diversity, from Tatars and Ukrainians to the indigenous peoples of Siberia. This isn't just a country. It's a federation of cultures where European and Asian identities have been blending for centuries. 49. The tale of the nesting doll, an iconic matryoshka doll. A symbol of Russia itself isn't some ancient folk artifact. It's actually a pretty modern invention. The very first set was made in 1890 by a craftsman named Vasily Zvyozdokin, based on a design from artist Sergei Malyutin. And the inspiration? It came from a set of Japanese wooden dolls representing the 7 lucky gods. Russian artists just put their own spin on it. The name Matryoshka comes from Matryana, a popular rural name at the time, and it has come to represent family, fertility, and the idea that truth is found by peeling back layers. 48. The first Tsar was the Terrible. The title Tsar feels like it's been around forever in Russia, but the first ruler to officially be crowned with it was Ivan IV in 1547. We know him by his much scarier nickname, Ivan the Terrible. But here's a fun linguistic twist. The Russian word Grozny doesn't just mean terrible. A better translation is formidable or fearsome. His reign was a complete paradox. He was a reformer who created a new legal code, but he was also a paranoid tyrant who created a secret police force, the Oposhniki, and in a fit of rage is believed to have killed his own son, throwing the future of his dynasty into chaos. 47. The world's longest railway. You've probably heard of the Trans-Siberian Railway, but its incredible scale is hard to wrap your head around. It's not just a long railway. It's the longest single railway on the planet. Stretching over 9,000 kilometers, this steel artery connects Moscow in the west to the Pacific port of Vladivostok in the east. A non-stop trip would take you across 8 time zones and last about 7 days. It's more than a train ride. It's a journey through the heart of Russia, across the Ural Mountains and the endless Siberian wilderness. 46. A sweet farewell to winter. Russian winters are famously brutal, but the way they say goodbye to them is a week-long party called Maslenitsa, often called Pancake Week. It's a celebration marking the end of the cold and the start of spring. The star of the show is the blini, a thin, crepe-like pancake eaten in huge quantities. They symbolize the sun, round, golden, and warm. The whole week is a blur of folk music, snowball fights, sleigh rides, and the burning of a giant straw figure of Lady Maslenitsa to joyfully kick winter out the door. 45. Summer can be surprisingly hot. The idea of Russia as a land of eternal ice is just a stereotype. While the winters are no joke, Russian summers, especially in the south, can get surprisingly hot. The city of Sochi on the Black Sea has a humid subtropical climate where temperatures often climb above 30 degrees Celsius or 86 Fahrenheit, making it a massive beach destination. Even in Moscow, summer days are warm and pleasant, and the long hours of daylight reveal a lush, green country that completely defies its wintry reputation. 44. The Byzantine, Baroque, and Soviet mashup. Walk through any great Russian city, and you're seeing a story told through architecture. It's a breathtaking mix of clashing styles. In Moscow, the colorful onion domes of St. Basil's Cathedral, with their Byzantine and Asian flair, stand near the severe, imposing structures of the Soviet era. Over in St. Petersburg, fancy Baroque palaces designed by Italian architects line the canals, a throwback to when the Tsars looked to Europe for inspiration. This visual mashup is a perfect reflection of Russia's history, a nation caught between East and West, empire and communism. 43. A tale of two continents. And a third everyone knows, Russia spans Europe and Asia. But for a while, the Russian Empire actually covered 3 continents. That third continent? North America. Russian explorers crossed the Bering Strait and set up colonies in Alaska, creating a territory known as Russian America. It was a hub for the fur trade, but it was incredibly far from the capital and difficult to defend. So, in 1867, Tsar Alexander II decided to sell the whole territory to the United States for just $7.2 million, a deal that would go down as one of the biggest bargains in history. 42. The first to orbit. Was a dog long before a person ever went into orbit, the Soviet Union launched a living creature into space to see if it was even possible. That pioneer was a stray dog from the streets of Moscow named Laika. She was chosen for her tough but calm nature and, on November 3, 1957, was launched into space on Sputnik 2. It was a huge, if tragic, step in the space race. It was always a one-way trip, as the tech for a safe return didn't exist yet. For decades, the official story was that she survived for days. But the truth, revealed in 2002, was that she died from overheating just hours after launch, a sacrifice that paved the way for human spaceflight. 41. Bigger than a planet. Here's a fact that sounds completely made up. Russia's landmass is bigger than the entire surface area of Pluto. No, seriously. Russia covers about 17 million square kilometers. Pluto's surface area is about 16.7 million square kilometers. You could literally unwrap the surface of Pluto, lay it flat inside Russia's borders, and still have room to spare. It's a comparison that shows just how massive the world's largest nation truly is. 40. An exclave in the heart of Europe. Look at a map of Europe, and you'll spot something strange. Tucked between Poland and Lithuania on the Baltic Sea is a small disconnected piece of Russia called Kaliningrad. This territory, an exclave, is totally separated from the mainland. It used to be the German city of Königsberg until it was taken by the Soviet Union after World War II. Today, it's a strategically important port and naval base, a geographical oddity, and a reminder of Europe's redrawn borders. 39. Land of fire and ice. While Siberia is famous for ice, Russia's Far East is a land of fire. The Kamchatka Peninsula is one of the most volcanically active places on the planet. It's home to around 77 volcanoes, and a whopping 61 of them are still considered active. This dramatic landscape is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire. It's a raw, untamed wilderness where smoking volcanic cones tower over pristine rivers, creating a landscape that feels both beautiful and dangerously alive. 38. A wealth of water Russia's size isn't just about land. It's also about water. The country has an estimated 100,000 rivers, including some of the longest and most powerful on Earth. Its network of rivers and lakes is so vast that it holds a huge chunk of the world's freshwater resources. This has been the nation's lifeblood for centuries, acting as critical highways for trade, providing water for farms, and powering massive hydroelectric dams. 37. A climate for every occasion. Talking about Russian weather is a massive oversimplification. Because it's so huge, Russia has an incredible range of climates. In the far north, you have the frigid, treeless tundra of the Arctic. Head south, and you'll enter the taiga, the massive coniferous forests, which then fade into the temperate grasslands of the steppes. Down by the Black Sea, the climate is warm and humid enough for a beach vacation. On any given day, Russians could be dealing with a blizzard, a mild spring rain, or a hot summer afternoon, all at the same time. 36. The lungs of Europe, the Siberian taiga isn't just a forest. It's the largest single forested area on Earth. Often called the lungs of Europe, these enormous forests stretch for thousands of miles across Russia. They hold the world's largest reserves of wood and play a huge role in absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Even though logging and wildfires are serious threats, the sheer scale of Russia's forests makes them a critical part of the planet's environmental health. 35. A foundation of permafrost. A huge part of northern Russia, especially Siberia, is built on permafrost soil that stays frozen all year round. This creates some unique challenges. Buildings have to be put on deep stilts so their own heat doesn't melt the ground and cause them to collapse. Roads and pipelines are a nightmare to maintain as the ground constantly shifts. Living on permafrost requires a ton of ingenuity and constant adaptation to an unstable landscape. 34. Europe's mightiest river. While Siberia's rivers get a lot of attention, the longest river in all of Europe is located entirely within Russia. The Volga River flows for more than 3,500 kilometers from the hills near Moscow down to the Caspian Sea. It's the main artery of European Russia and a cornerstone of the nation's history and culture. For centuries, it was a major trade route, and today it's harnessed for hydroelectric power. The river is so central to the national identity that in Russian folklore, it's often called Mother Volga. 33. From tundra to steppes, Russia's landscape is a masterclass in diversity. In the far north lies the Arctic tundra, a frozen, treeless plain. South of that, you find the taiga, the world's largest land biome, a seemingly endless belt of coniferous forest. Go even further south, and the landscape opens up into the steppes' vast, flat grasslands that stretch to the horizon. And framing it all are massive mountain ranges like the Urals, which divide Europe and Asia, and the Caucasus in the south. 32. The coldest town on Earth. Welcome to Oymyakon, the coldest permanently inhabited place on the entire planet. This small Siberian village holds the official record for the lowest temperature ever recorded in a settlement. A mind-shattering -71.2 degrees Celsius, or -96.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Here, the cold isn't just weather. It's a force of nature. Eyelashes freeze solid seconds after you step outside. Cars are often left running 24/7 because if you turn them off, the engine might freeze solid until summer. Yet for the few hundred people who call this place home, it's just life in the pole of cold. 31. A land of active volcanoes. Russia isn't just a cold country, it's a geologically fiery one. It has 77 volcanoes, 61 of which are still active. The vast majority are on the remote Kamchatka Peninsula in the Russian Far East. This region is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, and eruptions are pretty common. The dramatic landscape of smoking cones and lava fields makes it a paradise for volcanologists and brave travelers, reminding us that under the frozen surface, the Earth is very much alive. We are deep into our countdown, and we've already gone from the Tsars court to the coldest town on Earth. And trust me, the facts only get more surprising from here. If you're enjoying this look behind the stereotypes, do us a huge favor and hit that like button. And let us know in the comments, Which fact has shocked you the most so far? All right, let's get back to the unbelievable truths about Russia. 30. The world's deepest and oldest lake in the heart of Siberia lies Lake Baikal, a true world wonder. By just about every measure, it's the most remarkable lake on Earth. It's the world's deepest, plunging over 1,600 meters down. It's also the world's oldest, formed about 25 million years ago. But most importantly, it holds about 20% of the entire world's unfrozen freshwater. That's more water than all of North America's Great Lakes combined. Its waters are famously clear, and its isolation has allowed thousands of unique species to evolve, like the Baikal seal, one of the only freshwater seals in the world. 29. Bordering more countries than any other nation. One consequence of being so huge is that Russia shares a land border with more countries than any other nation, 16 of them. The list of neighbors stretches from Norway and Finland, up in the northwest, across Eastern Europe with countries like Ukraine, down through Central Asia with nations like Kazakhstan and Mongolia, and all the way to China and North Korea in the Far East. Having this many neighbors has profoundly shaped Russia's history, culture, and politics. 28. A bridge between East and West Russia's geography is its destiny. It's the ultimate transcontinental country, stretching from the Baltic Sea in Europe to the Pacific Ocean in Asia. The Ural Mountains serve as a symbolic dividing line. To the west is European Russia, home to its biggest cities, Moscow and St. Petersburg. To the east is the immense, resource-rich, and sparsely populated Siberia and the Russian Far East. This dual identity has been a central theme of Russian history for centuries. 27. Spanning 11 time zones, the best way to grasp Russia's incredible width is by its time zones. The country spans 11 consecutive time zones. This means when people in Kaliningrad, on the western edge, are having dinner at 7 p.m., folks on the far eastern tip in Kamchatka are just waking up to a new day at 6 a.m. Running a country with that kind of time difference is a logistical marvel and a perfect illustration of Russia's immense scale. 26. The largest country on Earth? This is the big one, the fact that explains so many others. Russia is, by a massive margin, the largest country in the world. It covers over 17 million square kilometers, which is more than 1/8 of the Earth's inhabited land. It's nearly twice the size of the next largest country, Canada. Its territory is so vast, it includes everything from polar deserts to subtropical beaches. This incredible size has given it enormous natural resources, but has also been a huge challenge to govern throughout its long history. 25. A haven for ballet. When it comes to classical dance, Russia is a global superpower. The country has an unmatched tradition of ballet, with companies like the Bolshoi in Moscow and the Mariinsky in St. Petersburg being famous for excellence worldwide. The Bolshoi Ballet started as a dance school for a Moscow orphanage way back in 1773. Russian ballet is known for its intense training, technical perfection, and deeply expressive performances, producing some of the most legendary dancers in history and setting the global standard for the art. 24. The Cyrillic script, that elegant and distinct alphabet used for the Russian language, is the Cyrillic alphabet. It's not just for Russian. It's used by many other languages across Eastern Europe and Central Asia. The script was developed in the 9th century by two Byzantine missionaries, Saints Cyril and Methodius, or technically, their students. They created it to translate religious texts into Old Church Slavonic, making Christianity more accessible to Slavic peoples and deeply connecting Russia's culture to the Orthodox Christian world. 23. White nights in the Venice of the North. For a few weeks every summer, St. Petersburg experiences a magical phenomenon called the White Nights. Because it's so far north, the sun never dips far enough below the horizon for the sky to get truly dark. Instead, the city is bathed in a bright, ethereal twilight all night long. From late May to early July, this transforms the city. The streets are alive 24/7, and the city hosts the Stars of the White Nights Festival, a massive celebration of ballet, opera, and music. 22. Blending Europe and Asia, Russian culture is a fascinating fusion of European and Asian influences. This is a direct result of its geography and history. For centuries, it's been a bridge between two continents, absorbing traditions from both. The Mongol invasions brought Asian influences, while leaders like Peter the Great aggressively pushed the country towards a Western European model. The result is a culture that is uniquely its own, feeling familiar to both Westerners and Easterners, yet distinctly Russian. 21. A land of more than 190 peoples. We touched on this earlier, but it's worth stressing. Russia is one of the most multi-ethnic countries on the planet, home to over 190 different ethnic groups. While ethnic Russians are the majority, there are dozens of other nationalities, like Tatars, Chechens, and Bashkirs. Many of these groups have their own republics within the Russian Federation, with their own official languages and distinct cultures. This incredible diversity is a core, yet often overlooked, feature of modern Russia. 20. The rise of the first Tsar, Ivan IV, or Ivan the Terrible, didn't just inherit a throne. He changed the meaning of Russian rule. After becoming Grand Prince as a toddler, he spent his youth watching Russia's nobles fight for power. At just 16, in 1547, he had himself crowned not as a prince, but as the Tsar of all Russia. The title Tsar, from the Roman Caesar, elevated him to the level of an emperor with absolute authority. This marked the moment Russia began to transform from a medieval state into a centralized imperial power. 19. The Soviet space pioneer. On April 12, 1961, the Soviet Union achieved one of the greatest feats in human history. Cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human to travel to outer space, orbiting the Earth in his Vostok 1 capsule. His famous cry of "Poyekali," let's go, at the moment of launch became the catchphrase for a new era of exploration. Gagarin's 108-minute flight was a massive win for the Soviets in the Cold War space race and turned the 27-year-old pilot into a global hero. 18. The founding of the Rus, the origin of the Phi. Russian state is traditionally traced back to the year 862. According to ancient chronicles, the local Slavic tribes were fighting amongst themselves. To restore order, they supposedly invited a group of Varangians, who were likely Vikings from Scandinavia, to come and rule them. Their leader, Rurik, set up his rule in the city of Novgorod, founding the Rurik dynasty that would rule Russia for over 700 years. This event is seen as the traditional start of Russian statehood. 17. The abolition of serfdom in 1861. Tsar Alexander II launched one of the biggest social reforms in Russian history. He freed the serfs. For centuries, a huge portion of Russian peasants were serfs, basically the property of the nobility, bound to the land they worked. With a single declaration, over 23 million people were granted their freedom. While the reform was messy and created new economic problems, it was a pivotal moment that completely restructured Russian society and started the country's slow, painful push toward modernization. 16. A chaotic interlude. The time of troubles. Between the end of the Rurik dynasty in 1598 and the start of the Romanovs in 1613, Russia spiraled into a period of pure chaos known as the Time of Troubles. It was a 15-year national nightmare of civil war, foreign invasion, and social collapse. After the previous Tsar's son died childless, a series of impostors, known as the false Dmitris, each claimed to be the rightful heir. A terrible famine killed as much as a third of the population, and both Poland and Sweden invaded, with Polish forces even occupying Moscow. The chaos finally ended with the establishment of the Romanov dynasty. 15. The Mongol shadow for nearly 250 years. From the 1230s to the late 1400s, the Russian territories were dominated by the Mongols. The Mongol invasion was a cataclysmic event that destroyed major cities, including Kyiv, and completely changed the course of Russian history. The Russian princes were forced to pay tribute to the Golden Horde, the western part of the Mongol Empire. This long period of Mongol rule isolated Russia from Western Europe during the Renaissance, but it also had a centralizing effect as the princes of Moscow slowly grew their power to eventually overthrow the Tatar yoke. 14. The Golden Age of Catherine the Great. The reign of Catherine the Great, from 1762 to 1796, is often called the Golden Age of the Russian Empire. A German princess who took power in a coup against her own husband, Catherine was a brilliant and ambitious ruler. She was a huge patron of the arts and education, kicking off the Russian Enlightenment. She wrote letters to thinkers like Voltaire and dramatically expanded the empire's territory, taking over the north coast of the Black Sea and parts of Poland, cementing Russia's status as a major European power. 13. Peter the Great's Western Revolution. Tsar Peter the Great, who ruled from 1682 to 1725, was a giant in every sense. He was reportedly almost 7 feet tall. He was a force of nature, determined to drag Russia into the modern age. After taking a grand tour of Europe, he returned with a mission. He reformed the military, reorganized the government, and introduced Western technology and customs. He even famously put a tax on beards to make the nobles look more European. His greatest legacy was building a new capital from scratch on the Baltic coast, St. Petersburg, his window to the west. 12. The long reign of the Romanovs. The Romanov dynasty was one of history's most durable royal families. They ruled Russia for over 300 years, from 1613 to 1917. The dynasty began when Michael Romanov was elected Tsar, ending the time of troubles. 18 different Romanovs would sit on the throne, guiding Russia through its transformation into a massive empire. Their long, dramatic reign came to a bloody end in 1917 with the abdication and later execution of the last Tsar, Nicholas II, and his family during the Russian Revolution. 11. The turning point of World War II Russia. As the core of the Soviet Union, played an absolutely decisive role in defeating Nazi Germany in World War II, known in Russia as the Great Patriotic War. The Eastern Front was the site of the largest and bloodiest battles in human history. The Battle of Stalingrad is widely seen as the single biggest turning point of the war in Europe. The Soviet Union suffered unimaginable losses, with estimates of total deaths as high as 27 million people. Despite this staggering cost, the Red Army's relentless push from the east was essential to the Allied victory. 10. A Soviet superpower, after the 1917 Russian Revolution, the world's first communist state was born. In 1922, the Soviet Union, or USSR, was officially formed. For nearly 70 years, the USSR was one of the world's two superpowers, locked in a tense ideological and military struggle with the United States known as the Cold War. It was an era defined by the nuclear arms race, the space race, and proxy wars fought across the globe that shaped the entire 20th century. 9. The birth of Moscow, the massive capital of modern Russia, started out as a tiny trading post. It only rose to power because of the Mongol invasions in the 13th century. As old southern cities like Kyiv were destroyed, people and power moved north to more defensible, forested areas. The princes of Moscow proved to be clever and ambitious, slowly taking over more territory. Over time, Moscow became the center of the Russian Orthodox Church and the heart of the resistance against Mongol rule, cementing its status as the political and spiritual center of a unified Russia. 8. A post-Soviet Renaissance. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 was a world-shaking event that kicked off a new and often chaotic era for Russia. The 1990s were marked by economic crisis and political instability. But this period also triggered a remarkable cultural revival. After decades of state control, there was an explosion of creative freedom in art, music, and literature. The Russian Orthodox Church, which had been heavily suppressed, experienced a massive resurgence as the nation began the long, complex process of forging a new identity. 7. A literary legacy. Russia's contribution to world literature is simply titanic. The 19th century was a golden age that gave us a whole constellation of literary giants. Leo Tolstoy's epic novels, War and Peace and Anna Karenina, are masterpieces of realist fiction. Fyodor Dostoevsky's psychological deep dives in books like Crime and Punishment explored the darkest corners of the human soul, and the plays of Anton Chekhov completely revolutionized modern drama. These authors created a literary tradition of incredible depth and emotional power. 6. The Russian Revolution's two-act drama. The Russian Revolution of 1917 wasn't a single event, but a dramatic, two-part saga. First came the February Revolution, which started with protests over food shortages and quickly spiraled into the collapse of the monarchy, forcing Tsar Nicholas II to abdicate. That was the end of 300 years of Romanov rule. Then came the second act, the October Revolution, where Vladimir Lenin's radical Bolshevik party seized power from the weak provisional government, establishing the world's first communist state and kicking off the Russian Civil War. 5. The world's strictest nature reserves, Russia, has a unique system of environmental protection called zapovedniks. These aren't just national parks. They are strict nature reserves, where human access is either completely banned or severely restricted. The main purpose isn't tourism, but the scientific study of ecosystems in their most pristine state, untouched by people. This network of reserves protects huge areas of Russia's incredible biodiversity, from the Siberian tiger in the Far East to the fragile ecosystems of the Arctic. 4. Fairy tales of magic and morals. Russian folklore is a rich, enchanting world of magical creatures and cunning villains. The folk tales are a unique mix of old pagan myths and Christian morality. Characters like the evil witch Baba Yaga, who lives in a hut that stands on chicken legs, and Koshi the Deathless, an immortal sorcerer whose soul is hidden inside a needle, have captivated generations of Russian children and deeply influenced the country's art, music, and literature. 3. Home to an array of faiths. While Orthodox Christianity is deeply woven into Russia's identity, the country is home to many faiths. Islam has a long history here, especially in regions like the North Caucasus and Tatarstan, and Russia has one of the largest Muslim populations in Europe. Buddhism is the traditional religion in several regions like Kalmykia, Buryatia, and Tuva, making Kalmykia the only region in Europe where Buddhism is the majority religion. Judaism also has a long and complex history within the country. This religious diversity is another key thread in Russia's cultural tapestry. 2. A cultural disconnect on smiling. One of the first things foreigners often notice in Russia is that people don't really smile at strangers. Now, this doesn't mean they're unfriendly. It's just a deep-seated cultural norm. In Russian culture, a smile is typically seen as something genuine, reserved for friends and family. Smiling at a stranger for no reason can come across as insincere or even suspicious. There's even a Russian proverb that translates to, "Smiling without a reason is a sign of a fool." It's a fascinating cultural difference that shows how much nonverbal cues can vary around the world. 1. The end of a dynasty, and at number 1, we come back to the fate of the Romanovs. After Tsar Nicholas II abdicated in March 1917, he and his family were held under house arrest. In the early hours of July 17, 1918, as anti-Bolshevik forces closed in on the city where they were being held, the entire family, the Tsar, his wife Alexandra, and their 5 children were woken up, led to a basement, and brutally executed by a firing squad. It was a violent, grim end to a 300-year-old imperial dynasty, and a moment that drew a bloody line between the old Russia and the new Soviet state. From a country bigger than a planet to a culture where smiling at strangers is weird. From the tragic story of a space dog to the magic of the White Knights. The 50 facts we've just explored have only scratched the surface of what Russia truly is. A nation of incredible depth, staggering diversity, and profound contradictions. The Russia you see in the headlines is a caricature. The real Russia is a story of epic proportions. What fact surprised you the most? Is there an unbelievable truth about Russia that we missed? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to keep exploring the hidden truths about our world, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another journey. Thanks for watching.